Right. Oh, sorry, that was a bit loud. Good, good evening. Sorry, good evening. Welcome to the executive meeting the on the evening of the the 1st of October. Sorry, I'll just let me wait while I'll reconnect his microphone. Good. Yeah, welcome. Right, first item, apologies for absence. We have one tonight, Councillor Miney Goldspink, centre apologies. Item 2, leaders announcements, just the usual. If we're going to have a chat, if you want to speak, obviously use your microphone and as we're online so that everyone can hear. Item 3 is declarations of interest. Have we got any declarations of interest? Nope. Thank you. Item 4 is the minutes of the last executive, which was held on the 3rd of September this year, which is on pages 6 to 16 of the agenda pack. Members, we have before us the minutes from the committee meeting held on the 3rd of September. Are members content for me as a leader to sign these minutes, or are there any comments or corrections? No comments. Could I have a proposer for the minutes?
I'll propose.
Thank you. Thanks, Vicky. And a seconder. Thanks, Chris. Right. Shall we vote on that? Are all those in favour to accept them? Thank you. Anyone against or abstaining? Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much.
Right. Matters arising.
Matters arising. You want to raise a matter arising from the last minute?
Page 12. When we talked about bad debtors, there's no mention of my request to go into part 2, and following through afterwards, Appendix E was not attached to the papers, which clearly demonstrates the variances year on year. And as it wasn't in public domain then, I myself personally requested them, and the executive made a decision without knowing what was in Appendix E. I was just wondering, does the executive want to go back and revisit that item on aged debtors? And if has the document, is it now in the public domain? Thank you.
Did we see the paper? I think it was. Do we know if it wasn't there? Well, I would guess that we probably want to get that circulated. Yeah. Thank you. Okay.
Will the minutes reflect my part 2 request?
We've voted it through. Did you not make a comment before when I asked if there were comments?
My hand was up.
Or was it?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I'm very sorry I didn't see that. Apologies. Can we add those? Can we get it modified? That's fine. Yeah. All right. Thank you very much. Right. Okay. Item 5. Budget 2025 to 26 and medium-term financial plan 2025 to 2035 preparation, which is on pages 17 to 32 of the agenda pack. And I'm going to hand over to Councillor Carl Britton, Executive Member for Financial Sustainability, to present the report.
Thank you, Leader. This report sets out the savings requirements for the medium-term financial plan for 2025 to 2035, assumptions included in the 25-26 budget, the risks and uncertainties facing the Council in setting the budget, and the timetable for the budget setting process. The medium-term financial plan 24 to 34, approved at Council on February 28, 2024, included a savings target of 5.6 million for 25-26, of which 4.2 million of savings has been agreed, with a further 1.4 million to be identified. Subsequently, this Q1 forecast has identified further ongoing budget pressures of 0.55 million, taking the additional savings requirement for 25-26 to almost 2 million. A number of assumptions have been made regarding council tax increases, government support and inflation. 3 models have been created: the base case, the optimistic case and the pessimistic case. The proposal is that the base case is the model to be used for the budget setting process, as this reflects the outcome considered most likely at the moment. The details of these assumptions are shown in the paper. The full medium-term financial plan based on the base case is shown in Appendix A. The outcome for the optimistic case is shown in Appendix B. At this stage, there are many uncertainties ahead. Some of these are outlined in sections 2.1 to 2.3 of the paper. I expect clarity on a number of these to emerge over the course of the next 3 months. In the interim, the Council will work on the base case assumption, and the leadership team will work on setting a balanced budget for 25-26, with the actions shown in section 2.9. The 24-25 savings programme has also been reviewed, and details are shown in Appendix C. Finally, a summary of reserves is shown in Appendix D. There is much work to do to bring council finances back to a sustainable level. We can hope for extra support from the new government, but there is no firm indication that this will happen. So the plan is to make realistic assumptions to find the solutions internally. I propose this paper and I'm happy to take questions.
Thanks very much, Carl. Have we got a seconder? Thanks. Thank you. Right. Questions, comments? Graham, I could see your hand.
Surprise, surprise. I've got a couple of points, but we'll deal with the first one first. Over the years,
That's
East
good.
Hants District
Always the
Council
better order.
has successfully delivered a number of high-profile projects that have greatly benefited our residents. These include Castle Park 2.5 million grant secured from the National Lottery Heritage Fund and the National Lottery Community Fund, along with contributions from
Graham's, I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt. Is this have you got a question?
I
Is that-
most certainly
is that-
have.
Okay, carry on.
This is a preamble to the
A
question.
preamble, okay, thank
Yes.
you.
From East Hants and Bishop Stortford Town Councils. Grange Paddocks, £22 million investment in state-of-the-art facilities. Hartford Theatre Beam, £30 million transformation project. Hartham Leisure Centre, £9 million in upgrades. The new waste contract awarded to Veolia. Old River Lane held in abeyance. These significant projects, along with ongoing improvements and upgrades, are being put in place and are either completed or nearing completion. At the same time, East Hants has seen a decline in the number of major planning applications and Development Control Committee meetings being cancelled due to lack of business. Additionally, the council has
Graham, I do appreciate that you've got a preamble, but I think you need to ask your question. I'm very happy to,
right,
I
okay,
appreciate your points.
okay,
and
just coming
thank
to it now.
That would be lovely, thank you.
Such as outsourcing pest control services, reducing its workforce, and identifying other savings which suggest a shifting focus in terms of council activities. This brings us to a critical point in terms of leadership requirements. With much of the groundwork already established, it is time for the council to consider a shared chief executive officer rather than filling the position with a full-time appointment. Referring to page 25, line 362 in the report on Chief Executive's office and associated costs. It is evident that there are opportunities for significant savings, especially given the Council's current financial constraints. Furthermore, I have personally raised this issue over the past few years, advocating for a shared Chief Executive Officer arrangement similar to what has been adopted by other authorities facing similar challenges. In fact, East Hants was approached in the past by a neighbouring council with a proposal to share the Chief Executive Officer role. With the resignation of the current Chief Executive Officer, we now have a window of opportunity to revisit this option. Given the scale of completed projects, the streamlined operations and the strategic direction of the council, a shared chief executive officer, potentially shared with another authority, would not only meet our current needs, but also deliver cost efficiencies. I therefore propose that we seriously evaluate the structure to ensure that we are making prudent use of our resources while maintaining strong leadership.
Thank you, Graham. I think that's an excellent point, and I think that's something that we will definitely look at. I don't think we can comment here any more than that. But thank you.
Right, I've got another point.
Sorry,
I've got another,
is it a question?
well, certainly is, yes. Yeah,
Could it just be a short question though, rather than a speech first?
Will it be a short question? I think it'd be great.
I will do what I want to do, I need to do. I won't be directed by the executive members.
Well,
On
I
aged
think you
debt, on
do need
aged
to be
debt,
directed
on
by
aged
chair.
debtors,
You do need to be directed
it
by the
said,
chair.
it said in
Graham.
your minutes that
Graham.
you would look at clawing back 40 to 50% of the aged debtors. With the budget, I think you mentioned something about £2 million that you've got to find. 40 to 50% of £1.8 million is a substantial sum of money. Will you realise that and ensure that the budget deficit is reduced accordingly?
Certainly, there are plans to reduce the age debtors, as you say. One thing I will point out that would be a one-off saving rather than an ongoing saving. So, but yeah, I mean, there is a plan in place to reduce the age debtors, and that will be incorporated within the savings proposals, I'm sure.
That plan is for this financial year, for next financial year.
I was thinking of the next financial year, 25-26.
So
the age debtors plan is only really just coming into fruition.
November,
So,
December, January, February, March.
well,
You've
I'm
got
not prepared to estimate how much the age debtors will be.
No.
So you've got
Okay.
6 months
Mm.
and you're not going to do anything, but you're going to do it in the next financial year.
Unless an officer would like to give you an estimate, but I can't give you an estimate at the moment. I can maybe come back to you with an estimate.
Is that not what you task the officers with?
The officers are working on that.
Right,
But I'm not sure the exact figure.
We'll stop that now, Graham. Thank you very much. Yvonne, yeah.
Thank you, Chair. This is really just a question for some clarification about Appendix C, which is 24-25 savings. I'm understanding these are savings that have already been agreed, but can I ask about the last one, which is reduced grounds maintenance specification, which is a £50,000 sum. Separately, I've been advised by parks officers that the £50,000 budget for playground equipment renewal for our 60 playgrounds won't be continuing. I wanted to see whether it's the same. Is that the same as this grounds maintenance sum, I wonder, or is the cut to playground renewal separate from that?
My understanding is that it's separate. The grounds maintenance is a contract to maintain the grounds, not provide new equipment.
Thank you very much. Right. Oh, Bob. Didn't see your hand.
Yeah, we're a long way away, aren't we? I'm afraid I've got a question on debt also, and I've asked before, so you'll get a sense of where I'm coming from. The figure mooted as a possible write-off is obviously a big figure, and we know from previous meetings that the size of the debt that's over 365 days old is in excess of £1 million. So. And we also know from the, I think, the previous executive meeting, as Graham's just touched on, that Graham had asked for more information about the makeup of the debtor book. And it was said that that could only be discussed in part 2, and the chairman of this meeting declined to go into part 2. So my question now is, what are the debts that might comprise the approximate 50% write-off? Who will make that decision, and what will the criteria be for determining whether any debt should be written off? This is a lot of money we're talking about.
The head of strategic finance and property will make the decision as to what is written off. I don't think we can go into the details in this meeting.
Do you mind if I just check the constitutional point there? There must be authority limits for debt write-offs. I'm afraid at the minute I can't recall what they are, but it's not a personal comment.
Yeah,
Does
okay.
an officer have
Yeah.
authority to write off that amount of debt?
We can go to James.
Yeah, it is in the constitution that the chief finance officer can write off irrecoverable debts up to a limit of £50,000 in any one case. Irrecoverable debt in excess of this amount shall be referred to the executive. So that's in part 9 of the constitution.
Does that help?
Well, I mean, obviously it helps in the sense that I accept that's the answer, but it does equally mean that if you've got 10 debts each of 50,000, an officer is writing off £500,000 of the debt, seemingly on his own authority. And that may be what the Constitution allows for, but it's a very significant amount of debt that gets written off on the decision of an officer.
I think you're right. I mean, I think when the Constitution was agreed, I'm guessing that point was agreed under the previous administration, and I think it's an interesting question. Perhaps we can look into that.
Well, I mean, I don't want to go on and on, but there must be some scope, surely, for the executive member to be aware of in advance of the debts that are proposed for write-off. Must be some scope for the executive member to comment as to whether the executive member does or does not agree with those write-offs. I mean, there's clearly, apart from anything else, a background question as to why we have so much debt and why so much of it is more than a year old.
Yeah, but obviously I can't comment on why we have so much debt. So a lot of that debt is quite old debt from previous administrations. I'm not aware of the details of those individual debts.
Yeah, Joan.
Perhaps James could help, or you might know. Is this one of these non-key decisions where it gets announced and then members have the opportunity to call it in if they've got the right number of people supporting that question?
On the debt issue, there's delegation within the constitution of £50,000. The chair made reference to it being agreed at the last time that the constitution was looked at, which is correct. I think it went up the last time we looked at the constitution because it was deemed to be fairly low previously, and it was up to the level that we've got now. So that went through council 3 years ago or whatever it was. But it's been delegated to officers, so it's not a case that it would need to go to officers. Whether it did or not would be a matter for members to discuss with the chief finance officer. But as I say, the delegation is there for a reason, because if it was a case of every debt needing to come before officers, then it would become a very arduous task to do that, because there is so many debt that needs to be looked at. And it was decided by council when constitution came before it, as I say, about 2 or 3 years ago, that £50,000 was the correct level to set it at.
But just to be clear, there's no call-in mechanism when these decisions are taken.
Alex.
It sounds like it would be interesting if we are going to explore the option to explore at what point the debt was when we came into administration. I'm not clear that I don't think there's an implication that it's suddenly bloomed. It's just, it's something that needs to be seen on a timeline.
Yeah, that's a good point. Chris. Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, I think it's very important to look at how debt is managed, and I'm sure we can review that. But just a point of, I remember I was in the Constitution group, which was chaired by Councillor Deering, and we did put that money, that figure up at that point, I believe. So I presume Councillor Deering can't recall that, but that is where we are. Another very quick point is that out of 25 million of costs for this financial year we're in now, we're looking at over almost 3 million to be paid on loans for the capital projects. And we have to remember that is one of the reasons why we are where we are in this very difficult situation, along with many other reasons as well. But just going back on Councillor McAndrew's preamble earlier, that yes, it's welcome that we have these facilities that we have, but it has come with this debt and also with the fact that Old River Lane is shelved because we can't afford any more loan and debt to go through.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Bob.
Just to say, to the best of my recollection, I don't think I was the chairman of that group. I was on it. I think Jeff Williamson was the chair of the group. Thank you. I'll make your correct.
Okay. Yeah.
Also, just to come back to a comment from the executive member, if we're talking about plus 365 day debt, you've been the administration for well more than plus 365 days. And the way you deal with debt is to get onto it early. You've had 18 months, more or less, to grapple with this debt. It does seem to me, I mean, with the best will in the world, I may have misheard you, but with all due respect, I think you, as the executive member, should know what this debt is. And I think you've said that you don't, I think.
We obviously have, we've been in the process of recruiting and building up a team to manage this debt, and that process has only recently finished. So I think that the process of getting this debt down is something that started very recently. It's something I'll look at and see, see how we're making progress with that. I'm quite happy to report back to you with some numbers once it happen.
Thanks. Right. Tim.
No, I think a factual basis rather than casting assertions would be helpful here. So picking up Councillor Dow's comment, I think it would be helpful to see a time profile of the debt, to see exactly what was handed over and how that debt has been managed subsequently. And for clarity, to publish that so that we know exactly where we are.
That would be helpful. Thank you. Great.
I think
It is a question, isn't it?
I think if we recall, what I said was the debt had grown since 2021. And what was said then, it was being taken away from all the different departments under the finance, under control of the finance. And what was in the papers last time was basically what was in the papers about 3 years ago. And I don't think the executive member for finance had fully absorbed the challenges because the response that he gave last time showed that he wasn't aware of the debtors, and the fact that the paper was missing Appendix C and he didn't pick that up and finance didn't speak to him about it, I think speaks volumes.
Is there a question? No. Okay.
Yes. As the executive member for finance familiarised himself with the aged debtors, and does he know what they are and who they belong to?
I do not know the detail of the aged debtors. No.
Okay.
I will aim to familiarise myself with them.
Thank you. Okay. So there are two recommendations for this item on page 17 of the agenda pack. It's been proposed and seconded. Please can we have a show of hands to indicate if you're in favour or against, please, for those in favour. Thank you. Anyone against or abstaining? No. Thanks very much. Right, we're moving on to item 6. This is the Capital Receipts Programme, Authority to Dispose of Assets by Sale, which is on pages 33 to 44 of the agenda pack. And we're going to go back to Councillor Carlbrett. Thanks, Carl.
Thank you. In the budget for 24-25, a number of assets were identified that could be sold to reduce council borrowing. This paper is to formally authorise officers to sell some of these assets. I would like to amend recommendation A to read as follows. Approve the sale by auction of the properties listed at paragraph 1.3.1, 1.3.2, 1.3.3 and 1.3.5. The reason for the amendment is to allow a little more time for discussion around items 1.3.4 and 1.3.6. These assets both have existing tenants and therefore a delay is not a significant issue in terms of cost, and it will enable further discussion regarding the future of these sites. The remaining sites are all parcels of land with no existing use and therefore can continue to be sold at auction. I propose the amended recommendation and I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you very much. Can I have a seconder for that, please? Oh, Alex, thank you very much. Before we have a debate or comments, can I remind members that should they wish to discuss any of the restricted information contained within Appendix 2, the executive will need to move to exclude the press and public on the grounds that it involves the likely disclosure of exempt information. Just bear that in mind. Are there any comments or questions? Bob?
Thank you. The executive member will know what I'm going to ask, which is Charrington's house. It's not on the list. So I remain confused about where we are in relation to Charrington's house.
Charrington's house is not on the list because it's part of the ORL scheme. So that's already a scheme that was designated for sale. So this list was purely additional items that we looked at the end of last year, put in the budget for 24-25 as assets that we could look at selling to raise capital receipts. But Charrington's house was never in that, nor was the rest of the ORL. Well, I suppose it was part of the ORL scheme, Charrington's house. So it's not an individual. It's not an individual asset.
Okay.
It's probably me. So you know what I'm going to say now, don't you? Which is in the papers that we've talked about before. The word disposed is used in relation to Charrington's house. Is Charrington's house going to be disposed or not, or what? Can you have another go at clarifying, please?
Charrington's house will be disposed of when the development agreement is signed. So yes, it will be disposed.
David?
I was at the Bishopstorfer Town Council Finance and Policy Committee last night, and one of the things the committee discussed was its aspirations to acquire the Thorley Community Centre from East Herts District Council. And the Chief Executive reported there was some reluctance from East Herts District Council to sell the site, and he was somewhat puzzled by that reluctance given the issue we've just been discussing, i.e. the need to generate capital receipts. Could I ask that issue be taken away and looked at, please?
Yes, you may. We can take that away and look at it.
Yvonne?
Thank you. I welcome the amendment to take Elizabeth Road, Havers Parade, off this proposal. And it's very welcome that we can have further discussion about that. As ward members, Councillor Jacobs and I have been trying to have a conversation about Havers Parade for the last year. And so this will be most welcome. We are not against the sale in principle, but it is a property that has community use and it's part of a community neighbourhood centre. And as well as that, as you mentioned, it has existing tenants, business tenants and residential tenants. So the way that the sale is handled is very, very important in terms of how we deal with the tenants, but also how we deal with the boundary, because the amount of land that the council owns, if that is sold just as it is, then we could end up with a development proposal taking away green space and a footpath. And I think when we have a discussion, there are things that I hope we can explore about what goes in the particulars, the sale particulars, when this comes up.
Thank you. Yes, I look forward to having the discussion.
I was actually just going to reply to Councillor Jacobs. Thorley Community Centre did come up at the Bishop Stortford partnership, and the interim chief exec has got it on her to-do list.
Thank you very much. Great. Right. Any other questions, comments? No? In which case, the recommendation for this item is detailed on page 33 of the agenda pack. Oh, sorry. The amended recommendation is as detailed by
Chair.
Would you like me
Chair.
to read it again?
Do we need to,
You'll need to take a vote on whether or not
oh,
amendment is taken first.
on whether the amendment is taken?
Yeah,
Okay. Can we, so we've got a proposer and a seconder, so can we have a vote on whether the amendment is acceptable? All in favour? Thank you very much. Anyone against or abstaining? No. Okay, so that was supported. So do we need now to the final amendment, to the recommendation? So we'll have a vote on the final recommendation.
You want to read it out?
Yeah, that will be good.
So
Thank
the
you.
recommendation is to approve the sale by auction of the properties listed at paragraph 1.3.1, 1.3.2, 1.3.3 and 1.3.5.
Lovely, thank you. So can we have a show of hands to indicate all in favour, please? Thank you. Anyone against or abstaining? No. Thank you very much. That's passed. Thank you. Right, item 7 is the last item on the agenda, urgent business. No items of urgent business tonight, and so at 19:32 I declare the meeting closed. Thank you.